Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. This time of year is the festivities for some, the holidays for some, and it's just another day for others. And in the world of Magic, that is exactly what it is. So yesterday there was a Legacy Super Qualifier on Magic Online, which is the first, I would call, premier event after the bans. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how did the decks that used to play Vexing Bauble do, how did the decks that used to play Psychic Frog do, is Nadu all over the shop, is Eldrazi all over the shop, and stuff like that. So I must admit, I did a little bit of cheating this time. I saw that Monored Prison ended up doing incredibly well at the tournament. So let's also try and find out why that deck was able to do well this weekend, where the last couple of weeks or even months, it hasn't been that great. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So 212 players, that's a good number. During the holidays, you can argue more players have extra time. You can also argue less players have extra time. I think in Legacy, it's kind of a wash. We do have a lot of family guys who most likely are not that available this time of year, but we also have a lot of guys with extra time on their hands trying their luck in Legacy. We also have all access on Magic Online that could help a little bit. But yeah, let's see. In the top 8, some familiar faces. We have the Silent Goat, Monored, Prison Specialist, Mental Misstep. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say the best player in the tournament. Stefan is incredible. We have Kill SUV, Great Grinder, Arcan Grinder. So very, very similar recognizable names, rather. Let's get into the deck list here. The deck that took down the tournament was Monored Prison. So let's take a look here. And this is the version with, I always call this like infinite 4-drops. So down to 3 1 rings, fair enough. But it looks like, let's see, 11 4-drops between Hieroglyph, Chaos, Adventure, and the 1 ring. And there's 4 Lotus Petals to power it out. So this deck is a bit lower on lands, down to 19 from 20, I guess. But it has Lotus Petals. So this deck is trying to play a lot, you know, turn 1 3-drop, turn 1 4-drop. Not a lot of past the turn. Oh, even Karn. Wow. That's crazy. So we're up to 15 4-drops. So why would you Karn here? You Karn because you expect it to be great against what the opponent is doing, but you also Karn because you kind of acknowledge that it's very hard to build a sideboard. So having Karn as, you know, access to Tormod's Crypt, having the 4th 1 ring out of there, having access to Trinisphere. Okay, so if you expect to play against, you know, Mystic Forge, Promox, Storm decks, etc., I like Karns a lot, but yeah, wow. This deck doesn't mulligan very well, but it does have more action on turn 1 on average. That's pretty cool. I mean, you can't really say anything about Silent Goat's results. That's very impressive. So, as always, when a deck wins a tournament, you have to take it seriously, because a lot of players are going to be like, oh, Legacy, let's play whatever won the last tournament, and because of all the rental services and stuff running around. So yeah, definitely gonna make a note of that one. Let's see what it beat in the finals, or split the finals with, who knows. Okay, I guess Eldrazi didn't go anywhere after the bans. That's very standard. Sideboard, very standard. We have talked about this before on the channel. It looks like 0 1 rings this time. What else can we see here? 3 It That Heralds the End. 4 Once Upon a Time. That's a big number. What are we working with? The Maze of Ith and the mana base. That's cool. I think that card still has some legs. A Single Monk's Diamond in the flex slot. Okay. So 3rd place. Okay, this is cool because now we have the first Dimir deck. So it turns out Dimir can still win games post Psychic Frog ban, and that is awesome to see. You definitely want this kind of strategy to be live. I love that we're still running the 2 Nile Spellbombs in the main deck, so a lot of respect for the graveyard in general. Looks like we are playing Nethergoyf. We are playing the Tamios, of course, and then a couple of Murktides to actually win the game. So, and a Kaito. So I've talked about this a little bit before. I feel like this deck is lacking either going for the throat and being an actual tempo deck, or, you know, shutting things down and being an actual control deck. But I actually feel like the opponent has a lot of wiggle room to beat this deck, despite this deck having, let's say, a good start of the game, and let's say turn 5 through 8, something along those lines. are the turns where this deck's card quality can be a bit bad, but, you know, fun deck to play. I love to play removal spells, counter spells, wastelands, and efficient threats. So good job there for making top 4 of a huge event. Let's look at the sideboard here. It looks like we have a single Hydroblast. We have a Snuff Out. I'm trying to look for cards that are good against the Mono-Red deck. Baragoyf I like a lot against Mono-Red, so this particular version looked pretty prepared for Mono-Red, so that's definitely not why Mono-Red was crushing. Oh, yeah, this is exciting, because now we get to see what the, I would say, best player in the field. But whatever. The point is, what is the elite choosing when you really want to win a tournament, right? And it turns out the Nadu Elves version is what Stefan landed on. I see he trimmed a Natural Order to be better against counterspells. I think that's a good call, because Natural Order is the card that you don't really need in fair matchups where it's supposed to shine, because you go bigger than, you know, 99.9% of your opponents. So I like that. This deck is, as I talked about before, cards like Toxic Deluge, Pyroclasm, Grafdigger's Cage. Those are the cards you want against this deck to shut it down. But it turns out Fury is also pretty amazing against the deck, so maybe Stefan got a taste of that throughout the tournament, and maybe even in the semifinals. Let's see the sideboard. Okay, the sideboard has 3 Hydroblasts, so Stefan was super prepared for the Mono-Red menace here. That's cool. I'm deafening Silence against combo, which is a terrible matchup. Yeah, that's just a terrible matchup, because you can't really mulligan for a 2 of, so you would have to keep a lot of hands and, yeah, just lose to fast combo. So interesting stuff. I mean, I want to play this deck more. I'm just scared to play it into a conceived combo metagame. Let's see what Kill HOV brought. Okay, I played against this player the day before in a challenge. I believe I beat him in the quarterfinals, where I played Bant Nadu, and he played Eldrazi. Yep, pretty standard stuff all over the shop. No one rings, so looks like there's some standard version of that deck brewing. 6th place, I know this name, and I also know that this player loves to play Mono-Red, so looks like not exactly the same version, right? No initiative creature and no Karn, so that's already 8. Yeah, that sounds insane to say. 8 4-drops gone, and we're opting for a more standard version with 8 moons. Magus of the Moon and Blood Moon are pretty awesome when the deck to beat is Eldrazi in the metagame, right? So, and let's look at the sideboard here. We have Leylines against Reanimator, which is nowhere to be seen so far. We have Pyroblast. Oh, right. Now I see. Okay, so this deck did not even... Oh, it did. Okay. I was about to say it did not even adopt Chalice of the Void, but it did. Vexing Bubble out, Chalice of the Void in. That makes a lot of sense. That is a bit of a conflict with the Pyroblast in the sideboard. That's part of why I don't like it. I don't want to play Pyroblast anymore with the Chalice, but it's totally reasonable that you can either power through the Chalice, or, you know, when you don't have the Chalice, it's an awesome card. Monored Mindbreak Trap as your defense against combo is not, you know, sustainable, but, you know, it can get by. 7th place, we have Delver. Looks like the blue-red splashing Questing Druid variety. Questing Druid is basically just your expressive iteration / extra creature card. That card is totally reasonable. I myself prefer Grixis these days, but it's totally fine. I love the fact that this version has access to Basic Island and Hydroblasts. That's going to be important in the days, tournaments to come after Mono-Red's performance here. So this deck is definitely, you know, I would say pretty prepared. You could fetch your island, you can draw your Hydroblast, and you're fine against the deck. In 8th place, yeah, this is crazy. Oh, wow, okay, this is the red-green initiative. I thought this was another Mono-Red. But it's kind of the same formula that Silent Goat is using, where he's powering out the 4-drops. He's playing this as a, I don't even want to call it a Belcher deck, but ideally you want to play a 4-drop turn 1, and your opponent will be like, well, I didn't have I can't mulligan for Force of Will, and Force of Negation is probably not going to do it because your card was a green or red initiative creature. This deck is pretty cool. I remember a year and a half ago, maybe even more. Yeah, maybe a year and a half ago, I qualified for the showcase using a deck like this. And it was exactly that. Play turn 1 Minsc and Boo, play turn 1 initiative creature, shut people out with Magus. one thing that's cool about this deck is that Cavern of Souls on human helps the red initiative creature and Magus, and sometimes you can name the giant here. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. This deck can put on a lot of pressure. But again, if you get forced turn 1, this deck can kind of crumble. Sideboard, you're limited, much like the mono red decks, except this deck has access to Force of Vigor, so I guess that's kind of cool. Let's see, 9th place, almost got there. Another mono red of the 8 moon variety. Okay, that's pretty cool. Anything cool on the sideboard here? Pyrokinesis up to 6. When I say up to 6, it's because I go Fury plus Pyrokinesis. I think 6 of those is very good against Nadu decks, very good against the Mirror. So if those matchups are very, very normal, expect Pyrokinesis to see more play. Brotherhood's End is trying to both sweep the board in a pinch, but also kill some artifacts, so it's not bad. But yeah, once again, very soft against combo. Next up, we have more mono red. Looks to be almost exactly the same as a version we've seen previously. We go for 8 moons. Sideboard doesn't have much spice. Then we have the Cloud Post deck. This deck is always dangerous, but with 7 copies of mono red in the top 32, it's tough to expect to make it through here. But I appreciate this player's dedication to the archetype. It's always super cool to see when players just keep working on a deck. Also, this deck is just hard to play against, because why would I bother spending hours and hours learning about the deck? Yeah, whenever I play against this deck, I kind of just, hope for the best and wing it to the best of my ability. 12th place, more mono red, this time with Trinisphere and Lele in the flex slots. Trinisphere is a card that, on paper, gives you game against a lot of combo. In reality, very hard to depend on, but of course it's something. I'm scared about, the amount of mirrors, the amount of Eldrazi matchups where a card like this simply does nothing. So it's not a card I want to main deck, but I appreciate this player analyzing the metagame and saying, I probably have to beat a lot of combo to get there today. Unlucky Monkey. He's been crushing in Vintage. No surprise at all to see him crush in Legacy as well. Looks like Grixis Delver here. Grixis Delver with Netherglyphs to have the full 12 1-drops. I've definitely thought about that before. I love that. Only a single Murktide. The conflict with Netherglyph is too big, so I like that number. Putting on a lot of pressure, trying to finish off the opponent. Let's see. 14th place, more Eldrazi. This time with the one of Null Drifter. Looks like the One Ring is gone from this deck. A couple of All is Dust. Great against Nadu decks. Could be good against red, who knows. 15th place, one more Nadu Elves deck with Aquila Drake in the sideboard. It's pretty cool against any deck with a fatty. Then all of a sudden you have 4 copies of Court of Calling. And we're down to 0 natural order here. We do play Thassa's Oracle to be able to actually win the game in one swoop, which is kind of cool. But also a very bad draw. Gaddock Teak is surprisingly strong against decks like Mystic Forge. It's always been good against Storm strategies. Yeah, could definitely be worth it in a Zenith deck. Then we try and counter colorless random creatures. I actually like these Dismembers, because if you're leaning on Swords to Plowshares, your white mana could be stressed. Especially when Magus of the Moon is in the format. So this might be secretly an amazing tool to have in your deck that doesn't care that much about your life total. Have Dismember if 4 Magus of the Moon is what you can expect to face. I love that innovation. Here we have a classic control deck. It always reminds me of the glory days of spring 2024, where I qualified for the marks, using an Up the Beanstalk control deck into a predictable metagame. This time, Respect the Cat took Up the Beanstalk into an unpredictable metagame, but that's awesome, and you should definitely play the kind of Magic that you enjoy. I love to see the Days this year. I did not expect to see Days in the Uro deck, but pretty cool. The Days Supreme Verdict deck. That's what dreams are made of. Yeah, Up the Beanstalk. It's tough to build control these days. You can see the sideboard here. Just you have your Carpet, your Pyroblasts against blue. You have your Hydroblast against red. Consigns against colorless. and a little bit against graveyard, a little bit against artifacts, and then there's a bunch of decks that you didn't really address at all in this sideboard, and that could be a problem. Nadu strategies, storm decks, dark ritual combo decks, so it's tough. It's tough with these decks. But yeah, great finish, obviously. 17th place, more mono red. This time with Cursed Totem. I love that card. It's good against Nadu. It does not get hit by Chalice of the Void, so having this card against Nadu is incredible. 3 Trinisphere, 2 Dull Rods to have game against combo like that. Oh, here's the Mox Champ, Nammer Squats. So it looks like Stefan and Nammer Squats worked together for this tournament. They look to be on the same list. I just noticed, a single natural order. I guess their sideboards are a bit different. 2 Leyline of the Void. That's only something a pro can get away with. And here we see the Source of Plowshares, which is a better card than Dismember, but also harder to cast. So I'm definitely going to think a little bit more about what to do with that slot. 19th place. I was about to say we have Mystic Forge, but I guess we kind of don't. No Mystic Forge. This looked like a deck that I saw on coverage for Eternal Weekend. The Ugin deck with Emrakul in it. This is basically Legacy Tron, and you just add Planar Nexus and Urza's Workshop alongside, Saga and the classic Tron pieces. That's pretty awesome. So let's see. The Witch Cling here. Oops All Spells. Yeah, Oops All Spells is always super hard to play against because some of the normal graveyard hate doesn't really work because of Memory's Journey in combination with Jack-O-Lantern. And then you basically never know if there's Charbelcher coming out of the sideboard. So you should definitely go and study these lists before your next Legacy tournament. It's just so bad to get that unpleasant surprise. Looks like this version is boarding into 4th Thoughtseize. As the disruption, it can clear the way, but it can also just kill your opponent's unfair plan. I like that a lot. Up next, more mono red with 8 Moons, Cursed Totem, Disruptor Flute. I like those cards a lot. Disruptor Flute, good against Nomad, good against, opposing whatever. Ursa Saga, Karn, whatever the case may be, Doomsday. It's just a solid card, I feel like. 22nd place, we're looking at Grixis. Or no red. Okay, so we're just looking at blue-black. That's cool. Havoc Cages here. Good against Reanimator, good against Nadu. Love that card. That's going to give you a lot of mileage. 2 Hydros, so solid preparation against the Red Menace. Somebody saw the writings on the wall. I certainly didn't. Then we have good old DN Solver, used to play a lot of Turbo Depths, but these days Eldrazi is the name of the game. No big surprises here. I guess there's a little bit on the mana base here, but in reality, it's just an additional land to help pass stuff like the Reproposer and kick the Battle Mage. No spice in the sideboard. Up next, more Delver. I love to see Delver back. I think that's pretty good when that deck is on top of the metagame, or at least, near the top. So let's see here. Single copy of Press of Progress, good against Eldrazi. Single Hydroblast, good against red. Counterbalance for the mirror. So yeah, this is something that I want to look at where with these results coming in, I don't think you can justify the counterbalance. So that will turn into a Hydroblast most likely. That's just kind of the small adjustments I'm looking at when I have my decks that I'm happy with and I see the recent results. Then of course the lists are going to be dynamic and I'm going to change based on that. So another Delver deck, this time with 2 Hydros, 2 prices, and yeah, the single counterbalance. Love that card for the mirror. Up next, what do we have here? A 3 planes deck. That's always amazing to see. So Savine's Reclamation, Days Undoing. Yeah, this is a player living their best life here. Playing Jeskai Control with a even Monastery Mentor and a Blood Moon and a Humility in the sideboard. Ruination. The hits keep on coming here. This is definitely an interesting deck. So we have the Days Undoing stuff, the Savine's Reclamation. That's kind of the personal touch on the deck. But let's talk about basic land control. If you have Blood Moons on the top of the metagame, I mean, this is not a bad shout to look into how can I build my basic land control deck into a field like that with a lot of Ancient Tomb. So sure, it might be hard, but it's a pretty good leg up that your mana base is awesome. 3 planes, I don't know about that, but it's pretty good against Blood Moon, let me put it that way. Now we have what looks to be an Esper Vial deck. That deck has got a lot of value lately between the Overlord of the Baelmerk and Philia. So you impend this one, then you blink it, and then all of a sudden you kind of build your own crazy 5/5 Baragoyf type card. Yeah, I mean, this deck is one of those where it's awesome to play. You have tools against a lot, but it's going to be hard for you to, in your 80 card deck to expect your opening hands to line up well against what the opponent is doing, because not only is there a matchup lottery, you also are less likely to see your 4-offs. So there's a lot of problems with a deck like this. If I'm talking about a perspective that only cares about winning. Also, you're kind of limited in your sideboard, I guess. Playing a Recruit of the Guard deck makes it a bit better. So, like the 1 Macabre and 1 Agent, 1 Engineer, you kind of get more mileage out of your 1-offs. 28th place, this is the first Reanimator deck. So, Reanimator took a huge beating in the bannings. It turns out, no Frog, no Party. Looks like we have added Brazen Borrower, Baleful Strix, and Bowmasters to the deck instead, basically. And of course, those are no Psychic Frog, so now this deck needs to win more game ones on the back of Entomb plus Reanimation. And then you have to sideboard into, and win with Baragoyf, Dodi Voidwalker, Bowmasters, Murktide Regent, whatever you prefer, and get over the hump. But yeah, definitely no easy games or easy matches anymore. You lost your number 1 Plan B card, which was basically not a card you needed when you could go nuts, but when you couldn't go nuts and things slowed down, the opponent accounted for your graveyard. Psychic Frog was the best card. So now we have to lean on the power of game 1 a bit more and, drag ourselves over the finish line for games 2 or 3. So I think there is a sweet spot for Reanimator if people start disrespecting it. So that's something that I'm looking out for. If people cut too much graveyard hate, this deck is back, I feel like. But for now, it's very much kept in check. 29th place here, we see Sneak and Show. Sneak and Show is one of those decks where you can always do well, but if you face a lot of Delver, you're not going to be that happy. This deck is awesome against Blood Moon because you have, between Lotus Petals, Basic Islands, you're just very good against Monored Prison. So this is one of those decks where, let's say, Delver is on an all-time low, Prison is on all-time high, then I can see this deck being a good one. So up next, we have what I call Poor Man's Psychic Frog, Quad Fury Emergent Intelligence. Unfortunately, this card is a legend, but it is a 1/3 Ophidian that does stupid things with Phyrexian Dreadnought. So I actually think this card is quite cool. I think Magic is at a place where you can just play your Ophidian, daze whatever the opponent's doing, and start attacking. And even Poor Man's Psychic Frog could be good. So I don't want to play 4 copies, but I like this card a lot. And I like the fact that this deck can play main deck Consign to Memory. That's awesome against Eldrazi. It's good against Mono Red. It's serviceable elsewhere. So you can kind of use that card as a part of your Stifle package. And then I guess if you're playing against decks with Lightning Bolt, that's awesome. But Phyrexian Dreadnought still gets killed by Push and Plow and Molten Collapse and what have you. So Prismatic Ending, I guess. So you have to time it right and play against enough Lightning Bolts, I feel like. Looks like the mana base is really awesome here. Whenever you can get away with just a single Chandra in your 2-color deck, that's pretty awesome. And Blue-White has decent sideboard options between the colorless one, the white colorless ones like Curse Totem, Grafdigger's Cage, and then the saving up sideboard slots because of your main deck consigns. Yeah, I mean, I could see giving this deck a whirl at some point. I love the one of Oculus here. It's kind of like a Murktide Regent, but slightly better. Especially in this deck because you can hit Dreadnoughts. 31st place, we have Death and Taxes. Looks like a black splash. Kind of taking a page out of the Esper Vial deck with the Overlord plus Philia combo. Black offers Bowmasters and Thoughtseize, and a little bit of sideboard shenanigans. No super spice in the sideboard. And the last deck is Mr. Spy, who won, I think he won the NCD tournament a month or so ago, month and a half ago, with this deck, new innovation on the deck, where he basically introduced a way to play around the Ghost Vacuums, the Fairy Macabres of that format, and took everybody by storm. Still rocking the Charbelcher sideboard, is now down to 3 Lion's Eyes. That's pretty interesting. 2 Dread Returns in the sideboard. That's pretty awesome. I guess that's something like you want to set up a situation where opposing Fairy Macabre does not, like, you basically have 2 Dread Returns in the barrel. That's pretty interesting. I could definitely see that being a thing. So yeah, there you have it. This tournament surprised everybody, including me, because Monored, as I said, didn't do all that well for a while. The numbers also showed it was definitely not a great deck, but then out of nowhere, 7 copies in top 32 of the most competitive tournament. So last thing before I let you go, I want to talk a little bit about how can you prepare for that deck. And I think if you get into good habits of choosing decks that has the luxury of fetching basics, you probably have to fit a couple of Hydroblasts. If you're playing blue, you have to remember your Consign to Memory has great crossover usage. I love the Dismember innovation that some players took, where you have a colorless way to kill a Magus, but you also just have a 1-mana removal for, what do I know, Lelia or Goblin Shaman or Bombardier. You basically just make sure you have as many live cards as possible. And then the objective is still that, you know, you're playing against a City of Traders deck, Chrome Box deck, a deck that mulligans sometimes. So you can oftentimes pick it apart by, if you just prepare the bread and butter stuff of having functional mana base and stuff that do something around a Chalice of the Void and stuff like that. So I'm not too scared about it. I actually think it's amazing to see that Monored can take advantage of people sleeping on the deck a little bit. And of course, Monored being good against the other premier Ancient Tomb deck is nothing to sneeze at either. So with Eldrazi and Monored on top of the metagame, you need to be good against Ancient Tomb in order to win your next Legacy tournament. And yeah, I hope you do exactly that. I'm going to leave you guys for today. It's been pretty awesome to get back into the mix. I hope you guys learned a thing or two. And if I missed something, let me know in the comments. And I will definitely be looking forward to browsing them later on. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.